in action. Rules that keep things going smoothly and fairly. Rules that help us get where we're going, help us work together, play together, and live together. Of course, in small groups, we sometimes get along without rules.
But there aren't any loud noises, just the sounds of working. We call these work sounds. Listen.
When many of us play together, rules make the game. Rules help us play fair with each other, so all can enjoy the game. Rules that apply equally to all. It's up to each one of us to know the rules and follow them.
Why do you suppose this room is so quiet? Perhaps we can learn from the teacher.
At New York's Madison Square Garden, a city college quintet faces five fast and fancy red boots from the University of Oregon. It's the opening contest of an intersectional doubleheader, and New York draws 2 points worth of first blood.
And you know, we have found that knowing when to be quiet is a part of growing up.
16,000 fans watch the boys from the Pacific Coast as they try to stem the onslaught of City College fever. But it's all over when Silverstein shoots off the hardwood, decades the ball, and the ball game for CCNY 38-36.
Because a quiet room helps all of us learn.
How do you do it?
Well, each of us knows how to work quietly. That's very important.
But the evening sports sport is a long way from the locker room. In the second game, a team of Northwestern Wildcats is matched against St. John's University of Brooklyn. The lads from Illinois are off to a springboard start when Bob Coble eases the Allen into the basket to take the lead.
Do you think you could walk this quietly? Listen to this work sound.
But tribal warfare comes to the gymnasium as the St. John's Indians retaliate with 2 points. From now on, the game is touch and go, with 10 men helping to get it there. A beautiful display of teamwork, and Northwestern gets in the number column with sharpshooting Todd Coble doing the honors.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Learn the Game, where you learn if you have an F for effort. I apologize if I sound like this or that I sound like this because it's not an F. I'm a little sick. But we're going to be talking about Pistol Pete Maravich. Is he overappreciated or is he the real deal? Rex, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing all right.
All right, so Pistol Pete Maravich, famous for a lot of his flashy passing and dribbling, his scoring prowess, particularly in college, but also in the NBA. He was a scoring champion for one of the years. He was an All-NBA player, All-Star. Everyone has an idea of who he is or was. But do you think that maybe some of the things that he did is a little overappreciated in today's NBA?
No, he's completely underappreciated.
Why do you say that?
Well, I mean, if you want to, let's just take some raw numbers and throw them out there. Now, obviously, you can't directly compare between eras and teams and adversaries and all because it's, not directly comparable. But Pete Maravich, his career high in the NBA was 68. Now, that was without a three-point line. ESPN went back and charted his shots in that game, and he would have ended up with, I believe it was 79 or something like that. Seven, I can't remember the exact number. If they had the three-point line. They superimposed the three-point line on the court, And he would have ended up in the 70s. But let's just keep it what it actually was, reality. His career high game was 68. Jordan's was 69. Right? Jordan's high assist game ever was 17. Pete Maravich's was 18. So when you talk about their apex games, statistically, they were right there. He was as effective. Now, when you talk about career numbers, his rebounds, assists, and steals mirror Dwayne Wade's, but he averaged over 2 points more a game than Dwayne Wade. And I know a lot of people, whole lot of people that consider Dwayne Wade the third greatest shooting guard ever behind Jordan and Kobe. But his career averages are actually slightly under Pistol Pete's. The biggest one, now Pete obviously had all kinds of injuries, drug addiction, all the stuff that went with 70s basketball. But his final year, he was a bench player, part-time player. He did start some, but then he didn't play a lot because of his knees. But his final year was the first year of the three-point shot in the NBA. And thus it being at the end of his career, he only got to take 15 of them before he had to retire. But he made 10. So his career three-point shooting percentage is 67%. Okay? And that was at the end of his career when he was old and broken down and he was forced to retire because he literally couldn't get up and down the court anymore.
Yeah.
You know, what would he have shot in 1973 or 74 when he was in his physical prime before any injuries? You know? That's the one stat that people gloss over because people go, oh, well, it was only 15. Okay, whatever. He still made, 2 out of every 3, which is far and away better than anyone ever.
Yeah.
And yes.
No. I was going to say, what do you think really drove him, or probably the wrong word, but what do you think limited his ability to obtain more All-Stars and more All-NBAs in his career? I think he had 4 or 5 each for his entire career. What was really driving?
His entire career was only, 10 years?
Yeah, it wasn't very long, but just
it was all injuries and addiction.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was all injuries and addiction. I mean, he wrote a tell-all book before he died, talking about how he had, I think it was in New Orleans, where he was basically in like a drunken stupor and then took drug. I can't remember what the drug is. I've never taken drugs, but he basically OD'd at a party after a game, woke up in some strange place on the floor of like an abandoned building or something, or an empty apartment. So he didn't even know whose it was or nothing, had no idea how he got there. Looked at the time, realized the day and the time, got up and went straight to the arena for the next game.
Wow.
I mean, that was his life at one point.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, he didn't have the career that, he could have. He's one of the guys, along with Walton and Len Bias and those guys, where his career, Len Bias, his career was all, possible potential. He never played a single game. But it's all, we saw what he could do. But we knew that despite all of his great achievements, he left a whole lot on the court.
Yeah.
Despite that. Like
Yeah.
it took till Caitlin Clark to beat his all-time college scoring record. And as far as men's basketball, it still hasn't been passed.
Yeah.
It never will, because anyone with that kind of ability doesn't stay in college for 4 years to get the record. They just go pro.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it'll last. That record, his scoring record, will last forever. But it's just, if you ever saw him play, and I did, if you ever saw him play, and then watch especially Bird, Larry Bird took so many things from Maravich, from Havlicek, from Rick Barry. Really, Larry Bird doesn't get. Everyone talks about his trash talking and talk about his great plays, which obviously were at the top all-time great plays of anybody. He's right up there, but nobody mentions about Bird is that he emulated so much of what Pistol did. There's a play that Pistol Pete used to do where he would jab step, get the defender rocking back and forth, and then he'd go up for his jumper, but he would lean into the guy and put his shooting elbow directly over the shoulder of the defender. Because you're always at basketball camps taught to keep your hands out like this. And he would use that against guys by he'd lean in and get his shooting elbow directly above the defender's shoulder and literally shoot directly over the guy's head. And if the guy just lifted his arms to try and block it, he hit Pete's shooting arm, and now it's a foul. And Bird took that and used to do the same thing. He would crowd the defender to where the defender didn't have room. Because when it comes to blocking a shot, you have to have space.
Yeah.
If you're chest to chest with a player and you block a shot, it's a foul every single time. You have to have space and then reach up and contact the ball. And he would intentionally crowd you and create awkward positions to where you either had fouled him or you had to just freeze to avoid getting called for the foul. And then he just shoots just a hop shot, jump 6 inches off the ground and just shoot basically a wide open shot directly over your head, right in your face. It's literally where the very one shooting in your face came from. And even Magic Johnson copied one of his plays, coming down on a fast break and looking one way and swatting your hand, but missing the ball, letting the ball bounce and just be in the air. Make the arm motion like you're passing, but you don't even have the ball in your hand. And then going back, grab it, and throwing it. Magic Johnson admitted when he did that, he said, I took that straight from Pete. I saw Pistol Pete do that on a highlight, and I went out and practiced it for an hour. So people don't understand what he was. This is why when people say, the 80s and the 90s were the greatest era in the NBA, I say the 70s. Because all your great players of the 80s and 90s learned from the players of the 70s.
Yeah. No, that's fair play. What about Pistol Pete? What do you think were some of his people that he emulated, or where do you think he got a lot of his moves from, or how do you think he who were some of his, I can't think of the word, but people that he looked up to take some of these capabilities from?
Well, his father instilled it. His father, when you go to a basketball camp, all the ball handling drills they have you do, the spiders, everything. Those were all invented by Pete Maravich's father. All of them. When he was a kid, his father played pro basketball, pre-NBA. I think the Pittsburgh Steamrollers was the name of the team. And he was a coach. He was a high school coach, became a college coach at Clemson, then went to LSU. Obviously, he got the LSU job because if he was the coach, then LSU was getting Pete. You know, it's kind of like Danny Manning's father becoming an assistant coach at Kansas. Yeah, because that way Danny Manning was guaranteed to go to Kansas. Same thing. You know, but he learned from his father the love of the game and the practice, the work ethic, working on your game and all that. But Pete would go play on the playground with the black players in town. And that's where he learned the playground style of basketball. And you can probably say where Cousy was the first one to bring creativity to the NBA, it was Pete that just brought the downright nasty playground game to the NBA, him and Pearl Monroe. And when those two went against each other, that was really fun. I don't know if you can find any of those games on YouTube, but those games were real fun.
Yeah. Peter Harpton asks, why didn't the Harlem Globetrotters ever individually succeed in the NBA? Peter, do you mean individual players who played on the Globetrotters, why they never individually succeeded in the NBA? I think there's been quite a few of them that have, since you used, I think, the word ever.
Well, to bring it to the Globetrotters, Pete Maravich was the first white guy that was offered a spot on the Globetrotters. They offered him $1 million contract.
Yeah.
Which he turned down because he wanted to compete, not just be a showman. He was known as a showman, but he wanted to compete. And the big stigma against Pete was that show-off ball is great for entertainment, but it doesn't win. And of course, now all of basketball is just show-off ball.
Yeah.
Teams go out of their way to actually show off and not succeed. It's called tanking, but still filling the seats. And that was a big knock against Pete, and why a lot of old school coaches and media did not like how Maravich played. As far as the Globetrotters, they did beat NBA teams in the World Basketball Championships pretty regularly. They beat Mikan's Lakers once, and then Mikan's Lakers totally destroyed them every other time they played. But they did get one. Actually, I believe they beat the Knicks. Yeah, they won the World Basketball Championship, not the NBA championship, the World. There used to be a championship in Chicago where every league champion would play each other in a round robin tournament. And one year the Globetrotters beat the Knicks. But that was the only year. They lost every other time. That was when a lot of the best players did play for the Globetrotters because you made more money barnstorming, playing all over the place, getting a piece of the gate than you actually made on a contract playing in the NBA. And people say, well, that had something to do with the talent. But what you need to understand is the NBA back then would play 78 games, I think. But
yeah, it was 77 or 78. I don't remember.
Yeah, 78 games. But the Globetrotters would play 300. So, yeah, they made more money because they played 4 times as many games. So they got paid a lot more. But then the more money the Globetrotters made, the more it became just a show and they stopped being a competitive team. And then it got to the point where it was scripted. And that's when they started losing all the top talent to the NBA. Better ball handler, Cousy or Pete? Cousy, because Pete would get out of control at times and would force passes that really weren't there, looking for the, 1 out of 3 times it'll make it and it'll be a highlight reel play and it'll, excite the crowd. Cousy was always, he played flashy, but he always played to win. Where Pete was always taught, by his dad, the flashy, bring in the fans, because Pete's dad played in pro basketball back when that was the problem. You had no TV deals, you had no sponsorships, you didn't have any of that stuff. It was, if you could get 2,000 people to come to the game, then you took an equal split of the gate. So the more people that came, the more money you made. So we instilled that into Pete, but the game changed between when Pete was a kid to when Pete got in the NBA. It was no longer like that, but that was the way he played.
Yeah. With this said, with Cousy versus Pistol in respect to being able to handle the ball, just to go back to that initial question, you think that some of his flashy play is a little overappreciated because of what you were alluding to, that sometimes it didn't lead to winning basketball?
Well, with Pete, it never led to winning basketball.
Yes, well, that's what I mean.
In college, he never got to the NCAA tournament. Not one time. And then in the pros, he never got, I don't think he ever got to the, I think he might have got to one conference finals.
He played with Bird in the rookie season. I mean, if you want, loosely, he was the bench player.
For part of the year, yeah. That was his last year.
Yeah.
And he only played part of the year. He had to retire.
Yeah.
But that team didn't win.
Yeah.
Bird won his second year.
Yeah, tracking. The aspect, because he played with New Orleans and Atlanta. I don't think they made any conference finals in the 70s. Casual Hoops Head says, is it accurate that Pete would have averaged 57 points in college with a three-point line, as Bill Walton said?
Well, Bill Walton just told the story. He's not the one that actually figured it. That was Dale Brown, who was also Shaq's coach, and Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. He went back because the school had all the game tapes, right? Every game tape. So he was able to go back and chart every shot that Pete did from either the transcript or an actual film. And it wasn't the 57 points. That was one season. He wouldn't have averaged 57 for his whole college career. That was for one season. I believe his junior season. If they had had the 19-9 three-point line, which came in 1987-88, he would have averaged 57 points that year. That is true, but at the same time, not true. If you just take across the board, just say, well, the shots he took with the three-point line, he would have made this much. But the thing is, you can't look at it that way, because if there was a three-point line, he may have taken more three-pointers, or he may have been defended harder at the three-point line, forcing him to drive more. So it changes the entire game if you just say, oh, well, if you stick a line in there. So you can't go by that. He averaged 44. Isn't that good enough? Really? I mean, he's the all-time leading scorer. Isn't what he did enough? Why do we have to say, oh, if he would have had a line?
Well, if he averaged 57, then he would have been the Bill Walton of college basketball.
Well, to be honest, if he would have averaged 57, chances are he would have been injured long before he got to the NBA. Because some embarrassed lower-level Division I college kid would have freaking taken his legs out.
That's fair. Why was Pistol Pete called Pistol Pete?
Because he started playing on the varsity in high school as a freshman. He would practice with the varsity team as a middle schooler because his dad was a coach. And being small, he was like 5'2" at the time. Hadn't hit puberty. Now he ended up being 6'5", but he was like 5'2". He was like 14 years old. And to shoot from outside, he had to hold the ball way down at his hip and shoot like that. And like an old Western, remember, this is in the 50s now, early 60s. This is like on TV, Gunsmoke, and every other TV show was a Western. John Wayne was the biggest star in the world. Clint Eastwood was just coming up. Wagon Train, Bonanza, Big Valley. It was all Westerns. So the fact that he shot the ball coming up from his hip because he was so small, a local reporter called him Pistol Pete because he shot his shot was so quick too, that he was essentially like, a gunslinger. And that's where pistol came from. It wasn't like Gilbert Arenas being nicknamed Pistol. That's right, I said it.
Yeah. Excuse me. How do you think Pistol Pete how well do you think he would have done in today's NBA if he was able to have done all the moves that he could have potentially
is one of the ones
done?
that would have done really well because he had kind of a frail body. He got injured a whole lot. Today, with how much they make, you've got the game management. So I think his overuse injuries, same with Jerry West, they would have been injured a lot less. I mean, they had almost all of their injuries were lower body injuries. Having modern basketball shoes and training techniques would have really helped Pete specifically. You would hope that the drug and alcohol thing would not be there today, but you never know. It might have been worse. Who really knows?
Yeah, it's not like they're not doing it today. It's just not.
Well, they're watched. They're watched
Yeah.
now. They weren't watched back then. Once you walked out of the arena, out of the team facility, you were on your own back then.
Yeah.
I believe it was David Stern that started bringing in like NBA security, where they would actually they had investigators that would check your private life and would follow you and look for things that could embarrass the league.
Yeah. Do you think that Pistol would have changed his game up to play, or would he have had to change his game up to play more loosely because he had played, especially with the dribbling?
No, how he played is exactly how they play today. He would have been the king of the YouTube click.
Yeah.
He would have been
with some of the
famous. He would have been more popular today. Whether he would have been more successful, I think he would have been more successful not because of you hear people say, "Oh, if he played today, he'd average 50." I don't think not like that, but the fact that his injuries were injuries that today would not occur as often. With the less contact, the better conditions, the better equipment, that I think he would have had a more stable career.
Do you think he would have been looked at as lauded? This
Yeah,
is not.
because how he played was exactly what they promote today. Fancy pass, deep threes. That was him. And he had a very novel and, in a way, very correct, in a way when they talked about he didn't play defense. They would always criticize him for his defense, but he would always say, like, I had 34 tonight. The guy covering me had 22 and fouled out halfway through the fourth quarter trying to cover me. What do you mean I didn't? Of course I played it. My offense is my defense. I make the dude work so hard on the other end. Like he would always look at his matchup. Like, okay, well, the guy playing me today had 24, but I had 34. So we didn't lose because of me. Which in a way that can be justified, but it's not that cut and dry.
Yeah. Mitnick says, just for note, part of the reason he was given such the green light in college is because his daddy was coach. His LSU teams never made an NCAA tournament, mostly because he couldn't beat Kentucky, for one. And then two, the outright SEC title and auto bid. And they were largely a 500 club. He averaged 38 and 39 shots a game in college.
Well, I disagree with one part of what he said. But he just said part of the reason he was given such a green light. It wasn't part of the reason. It was the whole reason. Okay? It was entirely the whole reason. If he would have went to Kentucky, playing, at that point, I think he would have been right behind Rupp's Runts. He wouldn't have been playing the way he played. He would have been shooting the way he shot. He wouldn't have been running and gunning the way he did. That was entirely his dad. But the college just wanted Maravich there because they knew, just like today, he got attention. He brought publicity. LSU was a football school. They had Bob Pettit. Bob Pettit went to LSU. Okay, they had great players before. But they were always a football school. They were never respected as a basketball school. And making sure that Pete got there by hook or by crook meant that you got attention on the basketball side. And that's what it was about, filling out the stadium for the university, more money for the school, local TV contract, all of that. That's what it was about.
Was him going to the New Orleans Jazz? If I'm not mistaken, that's where he started his career in the NBA. Did that have to I think it was gone by this point, but did any of the draft rights in respect to the region have anything to do with him going there? Or why? Or was it just coincidence that he went back to New Orleans?
It's never coincidence. It's never, ever coincidence. It never has been coincidence in the NBA, ever. It's always planned. It's always, look, back then it was $1 million business. Now it's $1 billion business, multi-billion-dollar business. Nothing is coincidence. Nothing happens by accident. Okay, you don't get a bunch of billionaires, or at that time, a bunch of millionaires together and say, hey guys, we're going to start up we're going to have some basketball teams. We're going to have the #1 league in the world. And we're going to divide up the teams. We're going to select the players and blah, 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 and all that. And say, okay, well, why are we doing this, guys? Well, because we're millionaires and we love making money. So they're doing it to make money. So every decision is what makes us money. No one goes in going, okay, well, it's all right. We don't, let's just see what happens, guys. Let's gamble my life's fortune here and see how this team goes. That's never ever happened ever. Okay, everything is not predetermined as far as results, but as far as what is going to bring in eyes and money. That's why territorial drafts came about, is to ensure you sold out your stadium by putting local heroes on your home teams. That right there tells you that nothing from the very beginning. They had territorial drafts before the NBA existed. It's never been just whimsical what happens, ever. Not ever.
Yeah. Yep. Zombie 8499 says, my dad was in high school when Maravich was at LSU, and he used to go with my grandfather to LSU basketball games. Almost nobody went back then. Dad always says if Maravich played 15 years. I'm not sure what he's saying.
No, you got to go on to the next one. It continues.
Yeah. 15 years later, he'd been one of the most well-remembered athletes of all time. I can't imagine what watching him was like back in the day. Unreal player.
Yeah. That was the whole point. Yeah, it was crazy. Now when I got to see him, he was old and broken down at that point when I got to see him play. But he still whipped out a few plays, I remember a game he got an outlet pass on my side of the court where we were sitting. The outlet pass came out. He turned. He was about 5 to 8 feet behind half court, and he fired a diagonal bounce pass between two defenders that were trying to catch up to a teammate streaking to the basket on the other side, and he turned both of them like they were just spinning tops.
Yeah.
He put the ball in such a perfect position, and this is what I learned later, to pass someone open. What you want to do is you want to put the ball in such a spot that the defender thinks he can steal it, that he reaches for it, because once he turns his momentum or changes his center of gravity reaching, it means he can no longer play defense on the guy that catches the ball. He's out of position.
Yeah.
And he put a diagonal bounce pass that I was like right behind him. I got to see the angle of the pass. Perfect. And the two defenders both reached for it, almost slammed into each other like Keystone Cops. The ball bounces right to his teammate, who just puts in an open layup. And it was like, wow, that was like perfect. So I got to see some slick moves, but I never got to see prime pistol. Never got to see that.
Yeah.
I got to see him with the two white sleeves on each knee. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, now I'm coughing and fit up here. Who would you have liked to have seen Pistol Pete play with in his prime?
Well, he famously had the one-on-one duels with Dr. J after practice, when Dr. J was with the Atlanta Hawks for 2 weeks during preseason. Before a judge ruled that he couldn't break his ABA contract and he had to go back to the ABA. But for 2 weeks, they were teammates in training camp. And Dr. J is the biggest proponent of Pete Maravich. saying, I played the guy one-on-one every day, and he beat me just as much as I beat him. We were like 50-50 in one-on-one. And this dude's going one-on-one against Dr. J, and he's beating Dr. J half the time.
Yeah.
And Dr. J was known as the greatest one-on-one player in the world at that time. But still, Pete was able to, get victories on him half the time.
Yeah.
I think if Pete had been, to be honest with you, if he had been on a team like the '60 Celtics, a team where he wouldn't get out of control with the gunning and creativity, and would have a rock-solid defense behind him to cover his weaknesses, I think he could have stepped into the Kuzi role and been fantastic.
Yeah.
Because you always get that when you get down to the end and you need a guy to make a play on offense. Well, this guy can make a play. He doesn't have to gun it the whole game. He doesn't have to, kill himself on defense. He just has to be there at certain points of the game. I thought he would have been fantastic. But he always went the low, trying to get, it was all about trying to get fans into the seats everywhere he went.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he went to Atlanta right about, in the same time as when Lenny Wilkins retired.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like coming in to liven things up and get the team, get the town interested in the team again.
Yeah.
Obviously in New Orleans, and then when they moved to Utah, you have to get the fan base in there. And then going to Boston was what Auerbach used to always do. It's what I bring up all the time when people say, oh, Bill Russell wasn't that great. He played with 43 Hall of Famers, and stuff like that. It was like half of the Hall of Famers that Russell played with were former great players that came off the bench, because he wanted experienced veterans who had been there and done that coming off his bench. Because when he wanted someone to come in and spell Bill Russell for the 5 minutes a game that Bill Russell didn't play, he wanted someone that just wouldn't make a mistake.
Yeah.
And I mean, Phil Jackson did the same thing. Brought in Ron Harper and Darrell Walker and Robert Parrish and John Sally, and, would bring in all these old players that had been on winning teams or were former all-stars who were going to be Hall of Famers, just to impart knowledge and stability to the younger players. That's why they had Bird, and they knew what they had in Bird, but let's get an older superstar that's in the same, thing as Bird, the same stratosphere as far as when he was when Maravich was healthy. But the thing is, if you read Bird's book, Bird didn't take it nicely. He thought it was an affront to him. And he did his trash talking with Pete nonstop. It was not real loving of the idea of bringing Pete in.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I thought, well, I guess not. You just kind of, or I kind of think that a lot of these guys will take some level of a mentor with ease, but maybe it's just my bias. But anyway,
Well, Bird
Um,
would not accept anything. He didn't sign with Boston. He was drafted the year before. Went back to school, and then leading up to the '79 draft. In fact, Jerry West said that if Bird had went back into the draft and not signed with Boston, the Lakers were going to draft him over Magic.
yeah.
But Bird ended up signing with Boston. He demanded to be the highest paid player on the team as an incoming rookie, which had
Yeah.
never been done before. And then he goes in there, and the very first meeting with the entire team, he tells them all straight to their faces, I'm not carrying anyone's luggage. I'm not doing any of that little rookie stuff. So just don't even think about it. And he took over the team from day one. Then they bring in old broken down Pistol Pete as like a mentor, like you said, the aging future Hall of Famer. And rather than like looking to him for guidance, he basically just told Pete how things were going to go. Bird was that guy.
Yeah. What player would you say is the closest comparison to Pistol?
Oh, geez, there's really no one like him. That's the whole point. The closest of anyone else in history, the closest playing today?
I don't know. I didn't ask the question, but how about both?
My gosh. Really can't think of anyone that mirrors him. Now, shooting ability is Steph. Because when Pete played, he was known, everyone agreed, he was the best shooter, period.
Yeah.
And all the other great shooters, so yeah, Pete's the best shooter, Pete's the best ball handler. So if you want to talk about the image, I mean, as far as ball handling, people say Kyrie is the best, right? So you have to compare him to Kyrie. But Kyrie is a small guy, and Pete was a big guard that shot over people and was creative. You see, Kyrie gets to the rim, like all the way to the rim. Pete didn't get all the way to the rim. Pete liked to shoot from, like, when he went into the lane, he usually shot from like 3 to 5 feet from the rim.
Yeah.
Because that throws the defense off. Because you penetrate, you're going to the basket, you're picking up your dribble, and you're driving in. The defender, especially a defensive center, is going to meet you at the point where he thinks you're going to release the ball.
Yeah.
But Pete would intentionally pull up, and the defender would go by, and he'd shoot from like a 3-foot shot instead of a layup. He wouldn't turn his wrist over. He would shoot a little dink shot rather than take it all the way in, or he would do a spin, spin it off the glass, something like that. It was always misdirection.
Yeah.
And so Kyrie never does that. Kyrie goes to the hole hard all the way to the basket. Like I said, there's really no one that played like Pete. That's the whole point. And that's why it's so hard, I think, for young fans to really understand his game. It's why 90+% of fans don't understand Bill Russell and don't understand the greatness of Bill Russell, because you don't understand, because there's no one to compare him to.
Yeah.
So you can't say, like, you can go when Jordan came out, and if you were talking to someone that knew nothing about modern basketball, hadn't seen Michael Jordan yet, and you're talking to an old head and you say, well, what's so great about this guy Jordan? You just say Dr. J. He's like the new Dr. J. He's taking what Dr. J did and he's adding to it.
Yeah.
When Magic came out, they're like, well, he's like Oscar, but he's really flashy. They give you a point of reference and then they say what you add to it.
Yeah.
Whereas with there's really no one that's come along where they say, to be honest with you, the player that's most like him, honestly, is Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is almost how she plays, the shot selection, the passes. Her passes are not always as flashy, but Caitlin Clark has modeled a lot of the moves. If you watch her highlights, she does the same 4 or 5 moves over and over again, and the defense just can't catch up to them. But if you take her moves, there's actually a YouTube video that shows this. It shows Caitlin Clark doing a great move, and then it shows a picture of Pistol 50 years ago doing the exact same move. There's no doubt in my mind that she actually watched Pistol Pete highlights and practiced those moves because they're exact.
Yeah.
Because, see, you have ways of beating a defender. You can there's 3 ways, essentially. One is deception, right?
Yeah.
Basically, the idea that you're going to execute the move perfectly. The pump fake, the jab step, the fake pass, the cut, whatever. You're faking the defender, getting him lean the wrong way, looking the wrong way, and taking advantage of his mistake, right? Then you have that's a skill way of beating a defender. Then you have the athletic ways of beating a defender, which is you either just plain jump over them or reach over them if you haven't the height advantage, or you just plain go around them. Like even when they're D'ing you straight up, no fakes, you just blow past them because you're just faster and quicker, and that's that. Pete, although he was a great athlete, didn't try to out-leap guys. He was shifty. He got guys leaning and turning the wrong way and beat people laterally, which if you're going to coach girls is the perfect way of teaching girls how to play because very few girls can beat other girls with verticality.
Yeah.
Not very many, WNBA guards that are jumping over the centers. You can beat the defender laterally. And Pete was one of the greatest ever at that.
Yeah. Hey, Rex, let's go through some of these comments and see what you would grade them. So Peter Harpton asked, why didn't the Harlem Globetrotters ever individually succeed in the NBA? Who do you think was a better ball handler, Bob Cousy or Pete? And why is Pete Maravich called Pistol? What grade would you give Peter Harpton?
Well, since we don't know the exact context of the first question, those were good questions. And once again, it's what I was saying. People trying to get a gauge on exactly what Pete was. They ask, well, Cousy or Pete? What that's how people always compare. And that's the thing is there's really no one comparable to Pete ever. That's what made him so great, so unique. But I would give those an A. Really don't pay much attention to the Globetrotter one because we don't know exactly, does he mean why did the Globetrotters not play in the NBA? Like the team not join the NBA? Because they could have. Or the individual players that played on the Globetrotters not transition to the NBA.
Yeah, no. Casual Hoops had asked, is it accurate that Pete would have averaged 57 points in college, like Bill Walton said? And what player would you say is the closest comparison to Pete? What would you give him?
Well, that's an A+ because that's the thing. That's the explain the myth. And then how do we grade him as modern fans? So that's really what this show is about, is those two questions.
Mithnix asked, he was the one who made the statement that just for no part of the reason he was given such a green light in college is because his daddy was coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then talking about
going to
Kentucky as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I had said. I had said those things. Yeah.
What grade would you give him?
Well, that's a C because I had already said them.
All right, and then
He affirmed
zombies.
what I had said. So, yeah, he backed me up. Yeah.
Zombie said my dad was in high school when Maravich was at LSU.
No, I thought that was the other guy that said that. Oh.
No. Zombie said this one. And then he said, Dad always said if Maravich played 15 years, he'd be one of the most well-remembered athletes of all time.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That's what a lot of young fans need to understand. You know, when they sit there and say, oh, well, this guy was great for back in that day, or this guy, his skills wouldn't relate, or this guy, all right, well, if you're going to say that Mikan couldn't play today because his skills didn't translate, then you have to admit that Pete's would.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you rate that, Steve?
Oh, those were great. That's an A.
All right. Seems that Myth Knicks brought the average down to an A minus like last time. But
I didn't know
either
you were
way,
keeping track.
yeah. For this marking period of this show, it's an A minus. Do you have any last words for the people about Pistol before we shut this thing down?
Yes. We're on YouTube. Use it. Watch old games of Maravich. The thing about Maravich, one thing that I had noticed, this was back, you see, Maravich was my brother's favorite player. So my brother played like Pete Maravich. And then I'm 6 years younger than my brother. So, but the thing that I noticed back in the day was, and you've heard me say this 1,000 times, every NBA player, every great player can contribute to the team when they have the ball. But what do they do when they don't have the ball? Often determines wins and losses. And the thing I noticed about Pete, when he didn't have the ball, he would make what my brother used to call phantom cuts. Right? Like he's not in the play. He's on the weak side. They're on the other side, and they're trying to work it down low or something, and they're pulling Pete away from the play. So he would go all the way almost to the hash mark on the other side to drag a defender out, right? But then right at the timing of when the play was about to initiate, he would make a phantom cut. He's not in the play. But the fact that Pete Maravich makes a quick dash and cuts from one spot on the court to the other, the defense turns their head because it's Pete Maravich. So you always got to be worried that he's doing something. He's trying to get the ball. And all he's doing is suckering the defense. But he's not just standing watching when he's not involved. He would stand in front of a defender, not really setting a pick, just like kind of getting in their way.
Yeah.
Nonchalantly. And he was always very conscious of spacing when he didn't have the ball to disrupt the defense. And that's what's been forgotten in today's game. No one does that anymore. Nobody just creates a disturbance away from the ball to distract the defense.
Yeah.
You can see him clapping his hands, like calling for the ball. So the defense has to adjust, right? Because you got to think, okay, dude's averaging 27 points a game. He's calling for the ball. We got to play straight up defense on him. But the play isn't made for him, and the whole rest of his team knows it. So he's calling for the ball, but his team isn't even paying attention to him because a different play has been called, and they know it. They know he's trying to sucker the defense, but the defense has to react to him because he's Pistol Pete. Very few players do play that kind of game anymore. That's the way they used to play.
Yeah.
But watch that. Keep track of that. Watch some of the plays, especially watch Pistol Pete highlights, and then go watch Caitlin Clark highlights. It's funny. She is the female Pistol Pete.
Well, thank you for coming again, Rex.
Yep.
It's been a fantastic time. Do you know right now if you'll be available tomorrow, or?
Have no idea. The whole house is sick. I don't know.
Okay, I'll get with you.
Yeah, I'll be able to let you know later tonight. Matter of fact, I
Okay.
got to run out when we're done here. I got to run out to the store and get some stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day and learn the game.
And give us some ideas, everyone watching, listening. Give us some ideas for a topic of the next show that you want to hear.
Yes, please put in the
While we're
comments.
doing it.
Yeah, or while we're doing it.
Yeah.
But other than that, learn.